We've got a packed lineup here to tell you all about what's in store today. We've got Frank Corva, Senior White House Correspondent at Bitcoin Magazine, Hunter Albright, CRO at Salt Lending, and Teruko Neriki of Bulgar Ventures, the Japan lead. We're going to open it up with really what has been the big piece of news coming out of this conference, the institutional embrace of Bitcoin. We have seen companies come out large, raising big amounts of money, and really the fruit of a lot of education that has happened behind the scenes in terms of trying to get Wall Street and big investors comfortable with what's happening with Bitcoin in the crypto space. Hunter, take us into this conversation and this education process that's happening.
Yeah, we're really excited to see it. I mean, we're out here as part of the launch and the announcement of the book that we're doing with BTC Media, The Bitcoin Advantage. Sean Owen and I are writing it really to help connect and share a lot of the stories about how people and companies and nations are now starting to look at how they can use Bitcoin for a reserve and to provide the liquidity, to provide the earning power, the growth power that they're looking for. And it's fascinating to have the conversations in Asia Pacific, specifically while we're out here, to understand what are the unique use cases and challenges that people are facing.
Teruko, over to you. Obviously, Japan lead, familiar with the region. Can you speak a little bit about institutional adoption, especially in this region?
Okay, so you may have noticed by now, a lot of Japanese companies announced that they are, following the sailor's playbook because of the regulation, because of a tax policy in Japan. The Bitcoin Treasury strategy works really well in Japan. So other, Bitcoin venture capital in Japan, we actually get a lot of inquiry from the corporation who want to adopt Bitcoin. So we are trying to make resources available. We want to offer one-stop solution to those companies. It's getting started, but it's people are really eager to get on board.
Pete, do you mind if I follow up there? Sure. Yeah, Teruko, I'd love for you to touch a little bit on the work that you're also doing with the Tokyo Bitcoin base. So there's obviously the institutional side of what's happening in Japan. We know that MetaPlanet is surely leading the way when it comes to this. And I know this might be something you're interested in as well, Hunter, but what is it looking like for maybe everyday people in Japan learning more about Bitcoin? And what role is the Tokyo Bitcoin base playing in that?
So, like normal people, Bitcoin is still something it doesn't come into their daily life. It's like a Bitcoin as a speculative asset.
Okay.
People are afraid of touching it. So we are still trying to educate them on the basic level of what Bitcoin is, why it's important, why it's relevant to your daily life.
I'm curious too, Hunter, is Bitcoin becoming, in the eyes of many people you speak with, maybe less taboo, more of just kind of an everyday macro asset, something to think about having in their portfolio, maybe hold a little bit of it in cold storage on their own? What is it like having those conversations these days?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case, especially in the U.S. People are thinking much more as an asset class to diversify their holdings and to solve wealth generation challenges that they have. I think some of the early conversations that we've had out here is the starting place is different. Bitcoin is being used for gaming. It's being used for day trading and transactional and even remittance.
Okay.
And so I think the light's turning on about it as an asset class, and I still think there's a lot more education about it being a vehicle for wealth, whether is it personal reserves or corporate reserves.
Yep.
But I think at least a lot of the conversations we've had while we're out here, people are starting to understand more about that and how they can then leverage it.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. Pete, back to you.
Well, I think another topic, Eric Trump going to be on the stage later today, the American embrace of this innovation and this technology. I was wondering if you could speak about, Hunter, Teruko, just what message that sent to the world and how we're seeing that ramifications here.
Well, in the conversations I'm having with people, I think they're excited about the conference, the growth of the conference, and the visibility that's coming to the technology and the asset class. Because one of the key challenges I heard from probably almost everybody is regulatory, and how can they get easier access to it, how they can get more clarity about what they can do with it, how they can use it as part of their portfolio. So I think it was talked about actually last night at sort of the whale event. David Bailey talked about sort of big signal in terms of the size of this event and size of Las Vegas, about the signal that it sends in terms of the Asia Pacific and the U.S. region, the North America, the American regions, really focusing on improving regulation to help sort of draw in more capital and more adoption.
Teruko, you mentioned the regulatory challenges out in Japan. Can you speak a little bit more about that in terms of the larger Asia Pacific and what you're seeing? Is it really that these regions need to adopt the approach the United States has?
Yes. For example, Japan, we had 3 decades of deflationary economy, but finally we have inflationary economy, so people are feeling pain everyday life. So past 30 years, holding on to Japanese yen was actually a good strategy, but now they have to switch. So we are selling Bitcoin as an inflation hedge, and then Trump kind of legitimizing Bitcoin as a financial asset has a big impact in Japan, because Japan just basically follow whatever the U.S. does. So get approval stamp from the U.S. government is a big push for us, makes our work a lot easier. So legitimizing Bitcoin is the one big step forward.
It's an interesting thing. I was going to say, Teruko and I were talking about this yesterday. I think a few weeks ago I was in the press room at the White House talking about Bitcoin, talking about it, with the regular press corps. And, now it's sort of part of the discussion. It's part of the broader discussion. This was during what the U.S. government called Crypto Week in the United States. So I think after that, I got all these messages from people around the world saying, like, our government needs to see that happening in the United States. So for better or worse, I'm not trying to sit here, shilling that the United States needs to do this and everyone needs to follow, but it tends to have that impact, right? A lot of regulation from the United States gets maybe copied and pasted globally or slightly adjusted. So I think it's important right now that the United States is sending a proper message, that someone like, Eric Trump is here talking about Bitcoin and some of its important property, it being property, a macro asset that everybody should have in their portfolio. This surely does change the conversation, not only in the United States, but worldwide.
I'm curious also the crypto conversation, right? Well, this is a Bitcoin-only conference. It was a Bitcoin first. We're trying to push Bitcoin values. I was wondering, Hunter, if you can speak in the education process. Do institutions now get it, that it is Bitcoin and everything else?
I think they do. I mean, I think Bitcoin is a great asset to start with and help with the adoption of digital assets more holistically. Also to help people understand the difference quality at the risk and return for different assets. I think there's a lot of similarities going from what we might consider blue chip stocks to penny stocks. And I think that's a great conversation to have with people. So it's not not everything is the same quality within sort of the different asset classes, and helping people understand that and where they want to play within their portfolio in terms of assets they want to acquire, and then what they can do with them.
Teruko, I saw you shaking your head a bit there.
We are lagged in that respect. So some companies announced that we're going to adopt Bitcoin as a corporate treasury, and then next week they would say, Ethereum, Solana. So still not there.
She's a hardcore maximalist.
What do you think? What do you think gets us over that gap? What needs to be done? And if you
they really have to understand it's totally different class. Bitcoin will become money. Those other coins will be like startup stock or something like that, security.
Frank, can you speak a little bit about that? I'm curious for your time in the press corps. You must get questions from other reporters about how they should think about the space.
I do. I get a lot of mainstream media reporters reach out to me. They say they follow some of my work, and I think that there's a real deep willingness to learn. But I think that there's also a lot of confusion around what is the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. But I think there's also, and we talked about this with Reina Chicas from Mi Premier Bitcoin, the process of educating people. There's an emotional hurdle that comes with it as well, right? So cognitively, you can explain there's 21 million Bitcoin. This is how you hold it, all this stuff. But then there's this idea of taking control of your private keys and understanding all this stuff. But people they're really trying to wrap their heads around this. The press is trying to wrap their heads around it. But I think what Teruko just said is really important. This idea that Bitcoin is money. It's a new kind of money. It's something that the world it's 16 years old, but we're really just wrapping our heads around it now, sort of collectively. We're seeing circular economies pop up around the world, which is really exciting. But I think kind of classifying it differently, Ethereum, Solana, even if you don't necessarily think of them as securities, you have to think of them as something different than Bitcoin, which really is money, a neutral money that for the world, for anyone in the world to access.
We got one more round of questions before we're headed to the break. If you're staying with us, smash that like and subscribe button on YouTube, Rumble, and X. If you're liking the content, want to talk about the region and kind of drilling down on the specifics of kind of who's maybe winning in Asia. We've seen a lot of countries come out and have conversations. South Korea, really active conversation and regulation right now. Obviously, Hong Kong rolling out the stablecoin initiative very recently. Conversations in Japan. So we have a sense of, is there a kind of emerging leader in Asia? Hunter, your thoughts?
In terms of the take-up, I think what's interesting, in Asia Pacific just in general, is it's higher than what it is in the Americas in terms of going from 20 to 25% of the population starting to own it.
Right, I think in Korea it's as high as 50%.
Yeah,
right?
so I think just in general the region is much higher. So that's great to see from sort of an adoption and a purchase and an engagement. Like I said, I think the use cases are different as they're sort of varying across the regions. But again, as I was talking to people yesterday, regulations still is a key challenge for continuing to get more companies involved and more investment for sort of companies that can provide services and support.
Teruko?
So Japan already have a clear, set of regulations. So changing it takes more time than creating new one. So in that regard, I think other countries which still do not have a clear regulation might have an advantage.
Yeah, I think it's also important to mention countries like Bhutan in the region.
Yeah.
Mining Bitcoin, mining 13,000 Bitcoin with hydroelectric renewable power, an amazing story that sometimes doesn't get talked about enough in the
Also
media.
following a little bit in Nepal, I think, talking about that.
Nepal doing the same now. We just saw the inaugural Bitcoin Policy Institute of India, and they're going to be talking about state-level governments, teaching them how to mine with renewable energy. So there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in the region.
Back at the Bitcoin Magazine News Desk presented by MetaPlanet, joined once again by an all-star panel getting you ready for the day of events here at Bitcoin Asia 2025. Joined once again by Frank Corva, Senior White House Correspondent at Bitcoin Magazine, Hunter Albright, CRO of Salt Lending, and our new addition, Lisa Neriki of the Tokyo Bitcoin Base. So the conversation before the break really about the story of Bitcoin adoption that's happening globally, happening in the United States now, taking the lead now, happening here in Asia Pacific as well. So I want to talk about the sense that Bitcoin is growing up, maturing, and this vision that this new wave of institutions and adopters see for Bitcoin. So Hunter, I was wondering if you could speak about this potential, right? Bitcoin has grown, it's been around for decades now, but there's still so much more to come, and we're early in this story, right?
Yeah, I think it's transitioning from people that are curious about it, especially from a technology play, to now really focusing on it as an asset class that can really enable and help companies, individuals, as well as sort of countries with how they think about sort of developing value and holding it and then accessing it. From a Bitcoin perspective, I really think there's three key points. One is sort of preserve, protect, and then prosper. And so from a preserve perspective, it fights inflation. It really helps people hold value. From the protect perspective, it allows people to really, they're opting in. They can send it to who they want to send to. They are in control of sort of their Bitcoin. And then the prosper is now all of the services that are coming out to help build it and allow people to tap into the value so they can diversify how they want to build their wealth, whether you're a company or an individual.
Lisa, I know you're more on the grassroots level. Can you speak to the just everyday people that are coming to Bitcoin now and the vision that they see for its future?
Well, Tokyo Bitcoin Base just opened in April, and we have share offices and co-working spaces. We are working a lot to have way more people in the space because so far we haven't really gotten much people coming in. I think it's mainly also because the Japanese community in Bitcoin is not as big compared to the US or El Salvador. And so far we are, our goal in Tokyo Bitcoin Base is to not only get, increase the community, but also increase the demographics of women and young people. So Tokyo Bitcoin Base is surrounded by a lot of universities, so we're doing a bunch of campaigns and projects, events in order to attract as many young people, students especially for the new generation, and women too. Yes.
Well, Lisa, your story is obviously part of an international story. Frank, I was wondering if you could speak about really just how this is happening around the globe. There's in-person places for you to learn about Bitcoin. You've been to many of them.
I love to always rock my my circular economy shirts. I have my Bitcoin Akazi shirt on here. So circular economies, I think they also speak to what Lisa's doing at Tokyo Bitcoin Base. A big thing, when people get into Bitcoin, I remember the first day someone taught me about Bitcoin, and they said, I'll sit down with you to show you how to use a hardware wallet tomorrow. Come meet me. And people need that. So let's call it hand-holding holding. I'm not trying to be paternalistic by saying it that way, but people, it's an emotional thing. Like what you're saying, this device is going to hold my private keys, and now that's it. That's my money. It's on here, and it's not insured, or it's not this. That's a very anxiety-provoking experience. And I think, you know, you can learn a lot. Well, you used to be able to learn a lot from Bitcoin Twitter. Now we just see people fighting there. But it's, you know, but you can learn a lot from that. But it's a really different experience to sit down with people, whether it's in a circular economy like Bitcoin Beach or Bitcoin Akazi or the Tokyo Bitcoin base, to have a conversation, to ask questions that maybe you'd be afraid to ask, especially online. You know, that's dumb. Why would you think that? A place where it's comfortable to ask those questions and where somebody can help allay those anxieties that come with getting more involved. You told me a great story about how you first received Bitcoin. You know, someone gave it to you in a wallet. You didn't get like a super tutorial on it, but then a little while later you went and spent some of that Bitcoin in El Salvador, some of the work she does in El Salvador, maybe we can touch on, and she was like, oh, it's a real thing. And that came from an experience, someone giving it to her and then having that interpersonal sort of, you know, using it, having someone sit down with her, show her how to open this wallet, all of that. We need that. We need physical spaces for that stuff to happen.
Right. I think on the macro level, you know, countries are really starting to ask, too, like, how do they actually encourage this kind of growth? You mentioned El Salvador. This was really a kind of top-down, right? The government kind of set the example, helped set the standard for education, doing a lot of work to educate with Bitcoin diplomas, incorporating as part of the university programs and education. So, Hunter, over to you. You know, if there's governments out there in the Asia-Pacific or around the world listening, who do they follow? What should they do? Do you have a playbook for them?
Well, I think so. One of the things I've been involved in the educational space for a while. So sit on the advisory board of C4 and the Certified Bitcoin Professional, and launched the first Bitcoin course at the University of Colorado. And one of the things that's interesting is, as much as people need to understand about the technologies, there's the financial literacy. And one of the shifts that I'm seeing, both at SALT and otherwise, is people come into the space like, I have dollars and I want to buy Bitcoin as an asset. They're less interested in sort of the technical or even some of the philosophical aspects to it, but they want to get involved and they want to have it in their portfolio. And so I think that's figuring out how to cater to them and think about that the financial literacy that goes with that is really important. So in the U.S., right, the average age for a first-time home buyer has gone from the mid-20s to the mid-30s. And it's really sort of mirroring where a lot of the world is in terms of the age of home ownership. And so where is the capital going to go to help those sort of generations build wealth? And I think Bitcoin provides a great vehicle for them not only to have an asset that will appreciate, but learn the skills of how to manage their money, how to sort of be disciplined about putting dollars or any sort of fiat currency into Bitcoin so that you can accumulate value and then be able to tap into it when you need it.
Pete, do you mind if a follow-up question here? I had a question for Lisa. Lisa, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the work that an organization that you started that actually helps people build wealth, but you know, people in poverty in El Salvador, I think especially young people, helping them to build wealth to hopefully kind of create a better future for themselves. Could you touch on that work a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm half Salvadoran, half Japanese. I have seen, you know, both sides, so Japan and El Salvador, and I really thought that both can benefit somehow. So the work that we're doing, I founded this organization in 2021. It's still a students organization, but basically we go every year on March. I take a bunch of Japanese university students to El Salvador, and in order for them to, you know, teach skills or whatever we can do for especially children, elementary school children and high school students in El Salvador in impoverished areas. One of the, well, you know, this has been going for 3 years, and the first year that we went, we mainly focused on research, and as we were doing research interviews, we really realized that Bitcoin education can help a lot these children to actually get out of poverty and actually achieve this financial freedom. So we started to implement Bitcoin educations from the second year, and now we have been collaborating with a lot of organizations in El Salvador, like Note Nation, and we actually went to El Salvador this March to conduct again this project, and now Note Nation helped us put a node in
every school, is that? Or?
Yes,
Very
in every school, but for now, like with our school, because we really go to a rural area that not many Bitcoin work has been done yet.
Yep.
So Note Nation helped us build a node there.
Incredible work, no?
Yeah, great to see. I think the next question I was really going to ask is ask the panel to share some stories from their own life of how they've got their friends and family maybe to adopt Bitcoin the first time and get over those hurdles. Hunter, over to you. What works in practice when you're talking to your friends and family?
You know, I think the process that I've seen work is, right, one, you get them to believe in the asset, believe in sort of the technology and even sort of the philosophical sort of purposes behind it. And then you help them buy it. I think, as Frank was sharing, you got to sort of help somebody take that first step. And I mean,
how much they're going all in, right?
Yeah, all in, right? Right from the go. I mean, for me, I took a decade's worth of change in 2017 when I got into it. I went to a coin store and converted change into Bitcoin for sort of the
actually physical metal coins.
I took and there you go. Here you go. I'm gonna convert sort of the physical coins into Bitcoin.
Oh wow. Okay.
And I did that as a way to then I was teaching the class at the time, and I had students do that as a way to see the ability to transfer and swap sort of the fiat into the Bitcoin without really having to worry about sort of the hardware wallets and sort of
that's a fascinating one. You take the physical, tangible coins, you scoop them up, you drop them in, and they shoot out
and then you
wallet.
and then you move it from sort of the receipt that you get into a sort of a software wallet of your choice, and then you can start to use it. And then we did a lot in class in terms of just sending it to each other, so that people could go through that physical space, like being in an environment, a meetup or anything like that.
And it's funny because I think it's especially you work with children, but I think with adults, especially who maybe aren't digital natives, this is an especially important process. I interviewed Leopoldo Lopez this year, who's a Venezuelan opposition leader, and he does this. He has an organization called World Liberty Financial, filled with incredibly intelligent activists from around the world, but they still go through that exact process, downloading a software wallet, sending some Bitcoin to each other, and their eyes light up. Whoa, this really works just like that. No intermediary, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, everyone of all ages needs to have that experience, and they need to have someone walk them through it.
And then to go verify it, like see it in a block. I mean, that is like the fact that that's a public record they might go see is just, again, it's sort of eye-opening and really enlightening for people to see it. And I think the work you're doing is fantastic. And I think the thing for me is like when you see people talk from different countries and cultures, they have the same problem about how do we build wealth. And one of the things I've seen across the regions, talk with people from Malaysia, Hong Kong, mainland, everybody's like real estate. How do we we're too invested in real estate or we can't get into real estate? What are the different options? And I think the commonality of that challenge of building wealth and building security for our futures and for generational futures is really empowering and connecting people around Bitcoin.